You are listening to the CWL podcast. Are you ready? Hey everybody, it's Kate. I am the host of the Creative Women's League. How are you? I am so dang happy to have you here. The CWL is your spot for motivation, inspiration, know-how, and of course, community. And how are we doing that? How am I providing this for you? By two, not one, but two weekly podcasts. Monday, we have Mindful Monday. Thank you so much for loving Mindful Monday. You guys are so good to me. Adrea let out a big sigh. That's my boyfriend's dog. She's so sick of me. But on Mondays, we talk for about 10 minutes. This is where I will help you get a mindset for achieving all week long. Mondays, we get into badass mode. Absolutely. 100%. I love it. And then, of course, there are Wednesday episodes like this. This is where we get to talk to a badass creative entrepreneur. And this Wonder Woman will tell us how she has gotten to the point where she is today. Each episode is so different and so chock full of amazing information. I love to share it with you. We also have community. The community is awesome. I love each and every one of you. We get together over on Instagram at Creative Women's League and also in the Facebook group. So you can head on over to Facebook, search Creative Women's League, and there you'll find the group. I love to get to know all of you. I really do. So if you aren't over there, please join us. The CWL community is frickin' amazing. I mean, truly amazing. I ask you guys to leave reviews of the podcast on iTunes. Leaving reviews on iTunes for podcasts, it's huge. Subscribing is great. I definitely want you to subscribe so you get all the episodes. Leaving a review is just as important. It helps tiny little podcasts like this one get out to the world. Honestly, it's something fantastic that you can do for big podcasts too. I have become a serial reviewer. I won't listen to anything without reviewing it because I want the karma. I believe if you're asking other people to do it, you should be doing it too. So, since I'm asking a favor of you that takes a couple minutes of your time, I like to read out your review right here on the air so that I can give you a shout out. So when you go leave your review, make sure you leave your Instagram name as well. You'll hear it in this review today so that I can send other community members over to you to say, hi, we love you. How are you doing? What are you up to? Today's review reads, 5 stars. I live in a very rural area and there aren't many like-minded makers nearby. So this podcast helps me feel encouraged to keep going in my making journey. Kate is a wonderful host and her positivity is infectious. This was from at Christina.Ann.Studios. Thank you so much, Christina, for going and leaving this awesome review. I love this because that is exactly what the CWL is there for. A lot of our listeners, a lot of our community members are in parts of the world where they don't necessarily have a close-knit creative community nearby. And some of us just either don't have time or we haven't clicked with the creative communities near us. So that's what CWL is here for. You can come find your friends, and a lot of people have already. I've made lifelong friendships through the CWL, and I know a lot of other listeners have too. So thank you so much, Christina, for taking the time to post this review. And to the other listeners out there, I hope to be giving a shout out to your name on the podcast next week. Everybody go stop by Christina.Ann.Studios on Instagram and tell her the CWL sent you. So I already recorded this intro once and I think my voice sounds so freaking weird today. I'm sorry. I'm still getting over this cold and it's done strange things to my voice. So if I sound weird on this intro, I do apologize. I'm trying to get better, I swear. So today on the podcast, we are talking to Andrea Tsang Jackson from Third Story Workshop. I am so freaking excited to bring this to you. Andrea reached out to me last week about a project she's working on. We talk about it, her IndieGogo campaign in this episode. And I was like, well, why don't we make time Monday? So she reached out to me last week. We made the interview for Monday, and now it's coming right to you. So it's pretty quick turnaround to get this out to you guys. But I love it. I love doing that. I love her project because it helps get makers paid. And I love anything that gets a creative paid. We also talk about childhood cancer. Andrea is a survivor. And we talk about when to turn to crowdfunding and why you might consider one service over another. I love this episode. I think you will too. Andrea is wonderful. She's so kind and sweet. I'll shut up and you can go ahead and listen. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing awesome. So where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada, way on the East Coast.
Oh my gosh, way on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's actually like east of the Eastern time zone. Like we have our own time zones over here. There's one Atlantic one, and then there's like a half-hour Newfoundland one. Yeah.
That's amazing.
You guys don't have those in the States.
No, I'm like, you know, being East Coast, being Florida, I'm like, well, I'm as far over as it gets, but that's not true in North America. Yeah. Look at you.
Yeah.
What's the weather like there right now? We always talk about weather. I don't know why I do this, but what's the weather like there?
I am thinking about the weather because it's cold today. Last week it was 30 degrees, so like I think that's probably well into the 80s Fahrenheit. But then today it's like 12 or 13 degrees Celsius. So the weather is very variable on this coast, and I don't really count on summer weather until July. But then our fall is pretty warm until, relatively speaking, until October. So.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like you were still in t-shirts and, summery, sunny weather until October.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like it's whole other world weather-wise up there.
Yeah, and I think it hasn't always been like that. It's changed in the last, decades or
I'm
so.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I'm sure.
Yep. As we're all feeling. Yep.
Yeah, and because I'm used to being in my own weather world, being in Florida, because it's like we just completely do our own thing. It's like it's like hotter than Hades, well into November, whatever. We're just doing our own thing. But
it makes, I feel like the weather gets talked about a lot here, but it also makes for different kinds of people, I think. If you're constantly at the mercy of the weather, especially like I find that people are different here. I'm not from here, so I noticed that difference when I moved here 6 years ago, that people are, I don't know, it's kind of humbling.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Because do you guys I always get so into the weather. One more question about the weather. One more. Okay. Do you guys get like giant snowstorms then, I'm guessing?
We do, but unlike the rest of what you imagine Canada to be, the snow melts in between each snowstorm pretty much.
Okay.
We have the highest rate of freeze-thaw days, so like where you're just like hovering below and above the freezing point. Yeah, we have the most number of freeze-thaw days in the world.
I feel like maybe I need to do something with this. Like I have all this information that I've gathered for other people about where the weather is, where each caller is calling from. It's like, well, what do I do with this information?
Yeah, you need like a map.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're this kind of person, you should move here. If you're this kind of person, you should move here. So, that's what we're going to have to do. But anyway, now that I swear I'm done with the weather, will you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. My name is Andrea Tsang Jackson. I am an artist, a designer, a quilter. Those are my my titles that I like to use, professionally speaking. Yeah.
And you're doing gorgeous things. You're doing gorgeous things with your quilt design. I always feel like I can pinpoint one of your designs from a mile away because it's got your own style to it. It's got your own unique, the way you put together shapes and colors. I'm just really obsessed with what you create.
Oh, thanks. I didn't come into quilting I don't have a history of quilting in my family. So I really come at it from a design perspective. I studied architecture and I did a lot of graphic design. I worked in museums, with exhibit design. So when I started quilting, I just brought that perspective to it. I didn't know anything about quilting techniques or tradition or anything like that. I just was like, here's a graphic. I want to produce it in fabric as the medium, and went from there. Yeah. So, it's not, I know that I've been in this quilting world for a couple of years. I understand kind of more of the history and more of the, tried and true techniques of this thing that's been done for centuries. But trying to bridge that traditional part of the craft with my own design perspective is a constant. It's a very interesting perspective for me. I love that bridging.
And I love that quilting. I think across the board for every quilter we've had on the show, it's like they have a background in some other form of art. They're designers. They are interior designers. They're whatever. And then they find quilting and are able to bring all that creativity they love from their other fields and bring it in for a fresh new perspective on quilting. I think that's so cool.
It is really cool. I think so much of our world lies in between disciplines now. In the last 10 years, when I was in grad school 10 years ago, biomedical science was that term wasn't used until 20 years ago maybe. Things like I met a guy in grad school and he was a math major, but he was working in the biology department, so he would take mathematical models and superimpose them onto biological phenomena. So
Wow.
like this cross-pollination of disciplines is really enriching, and that's where progress is made, I think, in this day and age.
Yeah, and that's really so interesting. I didn't even think about the fact that it really is happening in so many different fields. It's not just like art where this is happening. Like people are realizing, hey, I either have a friend or I know a guy or I had a background in this and I'm going to bring it to this new career I've chosen. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is. And it's neat that I think with the millennial generation, where we're not stuck in one thing forever.
Yeah.
That's where there's all these shifts, and that's kind of where the interesting, unique, innovative things happen.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. So have you always been a creative soul? Were you one of those people?
Yeah, I think I have. I was like, I was not an artist. You would never say that. Growing up, she's the arty type or anything like that. I loved crafts. I loved making things. I made a lot of different things growing up. Cards, paper craft, jewelry. I made models when I started getting into design. My mom is a designy, makery type person as well. So, she was definitely a hobby for her. And she stopped doing it as much as she probably would have liked to once she started, working, when my sister and I were 8 and 10. But, it's definitely an interest for her. She loves fashion and design and appreciates what it takes to make something and the thought that goes into just the details and how things, just lie on your body when you're shopping for clothes, or, how this particular detail makes the whole thing go together. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so when, going into university, when I was at the end of high school or nearing the end of high school, I was thinking about what I wanted to study in post-secondary, and I didn't really know. I was like, pure science seems like, well, I don't really love that. Business never appealed to me. Humanities and liberal arts definitely did not appeal to me because I don't like reading all that much. I'm just really slow at reading. I'm slow at reading, so that never appealed to me. So I fell into architecture, which sounds ridiculous, but it's interdisciplinary in itself. It's just design is like that. you know, the politics, the history, the socioeconomic considerations, and the art, and then the science of it all. That's by definition, architecture is interdisciplinary. So it was a little bit of everything. So I chose to go into that, and really came to love design and what it had to offer to the world. And then I began to see design in everything.
Yeah, I love that. In high school, I really thought I was going to be an architect.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so that really speaks to me in that way, that it's like, it is such a beautiful, like, medium for design, and there is so much happening with architecture. Like you said, it's, by definition, interdisciplinary. I love it. Mm-hmm. So, where were you living at this time? Where are you from?
Okay, I'm from Ottawa, Canada, which is the capital.
Yeah.
And I lived there for the first 19 years of my life. And then I studied architecture at McGill, which is in Montreal. So I spent a lot of time in Montreal, actually probably about 9 years in total, doing my undergrad and my master's in architecture there. I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts for a degree there. So I went to Harvard and I studied education there. And that was also an interdisciplinary kind of approach to arts and education, which was the program that I was in. And I got to really think really deeply about what design education has to offer anybody from, you know, a kid to an adult. And that is kind of where my professional interests will always lie, at the intersection of design and education. So I don't know if you can maybe through a conversation, it might come out, and then you'll see how that might work. Practically speaking today. Yeah.
I love that. And I got turned on to Dave Ramsey and all that, and he talks about the heart of a teacher and how certain people have the heart of a teacher. And, you know, when he's talking about it, he's saying if you're looking for financial advisors, you need people with the heart of a teacher. But ever since then, it's opened my eyes to people with the heart of a teacher. You know, those people that no matter what field they're in, they're ready to teach people, help get other people into it, help other people understand it. So now that's kind of how I see it. It's like you're a designer, you're an artist, you're a creative person with the heart of a teacher.
Yeah. And people always ask me, like, are you going to teach with that degree? Like, are you going to become an art teacher or something? And I was like, well, no, I don't want to be a teacher, but I want to understand how people learn, and I want to know where I can meet them. If they're not understanding something that I do, I want to be able to communicate to them what I'm doing and how it might be of interest to them, or how it can be transformative in their own lives, whether that is in a classroom or that is in a teaching workshop when I'm teaching sewing now, quilting now, or it's in just how I write my blog or how I talk to you about what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Once again, the lines have blurred, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're either in a classroom teaching people or you're in an art class teaching people or whatever, and that's your teacher. The lines have totally blurred. You can have blog posts that are so educational. You can have so many of the people who have been on the show do like weekly Instagram lives. There's so many ways that you can teach people and bridge that gap now. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's awesome that you came down to Cambridge. Mm-hmm. Was that kind of your one foray outside of Canada?
Yeah, it was. I was there for 9 months. And if I wanted to live in the United States anywhere, it would be in Boston. It would be in that area. It's got so much history and so much knowledge and so much charm. And I actually end up, now that we're in Halifax, it's kind of like a very small scale Boston. It's got the same kind of vibe. Yeah, it's a lot of history here. It's it's a very, very old part of the country. And Canada's much younger than the United States, but it's got the same kind of feeling.
I love that. I love it. So at what point in your timeline do you discover quilting?
I discovered quilting, as many people do, when I was pregnant with my first baby. and I wanted to make him or her something special. And so of course I wanted to design it myself. So I went to my, of course. I went to my, first time I went to a quilt shop. So, outside of the big chain stores, this was the first time I went to one of those smaller shops and got myself a rotary cutter and a ruler and then picked all these fabrics. They were all prints, which is like crazy for me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now that if you look at my work now. But I didn't know any. This was a traditional quilt shop. They had a small section of solids, which I didn't even see when I was gathering my supplies for this first quilt. And the quilt was gray. The palette was modern. I knew it was not very traditional. It was gray, white, orange, and yellow. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl, right? So, I designed a block. So it looks very traditional in that it's got 12 blocks. It's got sashing. It's got borders. But I designed the block myself. It looks like a bit like a paper crane, but still very, some pretty basic shapes.
Yeah.
And then one of them is backwards. It's flying the other way.
On purpose?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As a quilter, I know sometimes those are design decisions we make later. So, yeah.
Happy accidents. No, this was very intentional.
I love it.
Yeah, so that was my first story. And then when I had my second baby, or before he was born, I started designing a quilt based on an artist's work, Andy Gilmore. And this is when I discovered solid fabrics. So I picked 25 different solid colors. Ended up being over 2,000 little triangles.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, that were hourglass blocks, but I didn't know anything about hourglass blocks. I just made them triangle by triangle. This quilt ended up going to Quiltcon, the Modern Quilt Guild show in 2017. But it took me almost 2 years to finish that quilt. So, I had a toddler and a baby and we moved a couple of times in there. So that took me 2 years. And then, I made a couple of patchwork quilts after that, which I loved making. They were just such a break from my everyday, being at home with these two little people.
Yeah.
And then when it got serious was, at the beginning of 2016, I joined, my local chapter of the Modern Quilt Guild. So the Maritime Modern Quilt Guild. And that's when my whole world changed. There were these people that knew so many things that could teach me things, and I could understand what it was like to be a part of a community that had this same hobby and same passion, and wanted to talk about fabric and notions all day and patterns. And they were the people that encouraged me as I was trying to find my own voice. I suddenly realized that I had something to say through my work, and they really just encouraged me to forge ahead with it.
That's amazing. I mean, really, I wish every creative woman, I wish every artist, I wish every person could find a community for themselves as loving and accepting as awesome as quilt guilds.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in the right one, then you are just in one that is it's just the best feeling to walk into one.
It is. And I feel, I'm sure that other people in other areas feel the same way about their running group or their yoga class or, their hockey team, their house league hockey team.
Yeah.
Or, so these are people that share your leisure passion. But those are so life-giving on their own. But then when you do it in a group, there's this whole other side of it that really pulls you along and opens up a whole new world when you're doing it in a community. Yeah,
I know you'll be shocked. I know everybody listening will be really shocked, but I'm a huge advocate of community. I know it's shocking. I know it's super shocking, but it is. It's just like a breath of fresh air. And then you have those people who are pushing you. I mean, I don't know if you were aware of it at the time. It's easy to listen to your story now and go, if the first quilt you're making, you're designing a block yourself and designing a whole quilt yourself, you're going to be a designer. You're going to really want to be doing your own thing and creating this beautiful art for yourself and others. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you saw that at the time, but they definitely see it in you and help encourage that. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine how what I would be doing right now if I wasn't part of a guild. I think I would be pretty lost. Yeah. I probably would have discarded the medium as a whole. I probably would have written it off in a certain way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love it. So the hourglass block quilt, I don't know the name of the quilt.
It's called Crow Quills Analog. So I called it that because the original artwork was called Crow Quills, and and it was a digital artwork. So, so I wanted to make an analog version of it, and that's what it ended up being called. And I talked to the artist, actually. He called me, and we had a chat about, it was pretty awesome. Yeah. I sent him the quilt because I wanted to show him, and he was like, "This is amazing. Can I like call you or something, and we can talk?" This was before I started, before I joined the guild, before that turning point.
Yeah.
Doing it in community. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I wanted to talk about. So that wasn't your second quilt you ever made, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, my word.
I thought it was going to be my last one. Like it wasn't, it would be like my swan song. It would be the last one because I knew I wasn't going to have more babies after the second baby.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that'll be it for the quilting if I want it. Now I know how to do it. And, that was very cocky of me to say. Now I know how to do it. And, this will be the last one, probably of significance, let's say.
But were you aware of how, like, remarkable it is that your second quilt you've ever made is going into Quiltcon?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I see all the mistakes. I see the craftsmanship issues and like how I could have done it better so that, the bias, all these things I see now that I could have done better. But, no, I don't know. I didn't really think anything of it. This is really weird of me to say. I've never said this so publicly, but I think I have an innate sense of what is good. And I don't mean that to be, overconfident or something, but I haven't, there's some sort of intuition in me that knows that a work is good. Whether, and this, like, we can delve into a whole conversation about, the universality of, like, beauty and, like, how objective that can be. But we also know that it's very subjective.
Yeah.
But I think I have an objective meter inside me that says, like, this is good or this is not good. And whether that's, a moral decision or a design decision, having that kind of meter inside of me has really guided all the things I do. Because if I know that any part of this is not good, why would I pursue it? Or what does that mean to me? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that makes sense for sure. And, whoever's listening to this, it's not all quilters who listen, but you've seen things that are in your, chosen art or craft or whatever, and you're like, not my style. I'm not going to put it in my house. I'm not going to make it myself, but holy crap, that's good. So you always know, exactly. Like, you have like, you can recognize when somebody's skills are like, oh, phenomenal. So no, I don't really want to do a whole applique quilt by myself with all these tiny little pieces, but I want to look at the one you made because the one you made is really good.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, to me, I was just like, oh, this is a good, this is good. Whether it's excellent or not is not the quite, like, this is good. So, I don't know what answers the question.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was just wondering, like, sometimes, and I love when it happens, sometimes you're so naive because you're so new to something, or you're so, you just don't, for whatever reason, you just dove into something and you don't have the fear there or the self-doubt there. So I was wondering if you kind of just stumbled into Quiltcon and went, hey, this is kind of cool. And now years later, it's like, oh no, that was a big deal. Like, wow, okay, cool. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that that is a big deal.
Yeah.
And the fearlessness actually stems probably from, well, there's a lot of factors. I think some people are built that way.
Yeah. Are you built that way?
Bit of that.
Okay.
I don't know. I can point to formative things that probably made me this way. And the biggest one is, I had childhood cancer. So I had a tumor in my arm when I was 10. And so the fearlessness is a kind of an outgrowth of that, because like, what do I do when I'm creating art is like, it's fabric. Like, it's not, nobody's going to die here. Like, it's not, there's nothing to fear here. So, that kind of fearlessness is a part of probably everything I do now professionally, especially professionally speaking, is that like, what's going to happen here? I will make something I don't like, or I will make something that I love, or I will make something that everybody hates, but I love. Like, there's like, the stakes are not so high.
Yeah. Well, that definitely makes sense. I mean, that's a major life event to have to deal with so young. Yeah.
And, I didn't realize at the time that there was much to fear. I think my parents protected me from that. I don't, a few years after that, when I was a teenager, I was like, oh, well, that is a big deal. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
But when I was living it, it was like, okay, I go to school, I go to my piano lesson, I go to the hospital, I go to school again. Like, it was just part of my routine. So, like, it didn't seem like a huge deal. It was just like something I had to do in my week, So having that as, a formative life experience really speaks to like, well, what does it matter if I fail at this? Does it? I mean, it emotionally, it is kind of, yes, emotionally it can be taxing, but there are ways and people to support you through the emotions of it, but I'm not going to die from quilting.
Nobody is. Yeah. It's like, if this is an utter failure, then, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Maybe I can cut it up and make something else.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't even know what to say about having such a experience at so young. I can't imagine it. And it sounds like your parents really did a phenomenal job as parents and not making it like, make you feel like the sky was falling when they could have very well felt that way.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they felt that way. They didn't, a lot of parents with kids that have such a serious illness would take time off work. Neither of them did. They just, right? Like, you'd take a leave of absence from your job. No, they didn't. And I didn't think that was abnormal at the time. I was like, as a parent now, I'd be like, are you crazy? Like, what were you thinking? But for them, it was probably a way for them to cope, to be like, True. Hey, this is just normal life, and we're going to do normal life. That helps her to be normal. Like that's as a 10-year-old, you really just, like when you're a preteen, you just want to you don't want to stick out. You want to be normal.
Absolutely.
Right. So, that approach, was definitely, but the way, I think the best way they knew how to do it, and it turned out pretty well. I mean, they were completely stressed out, as you would be. I think it was a good decision for them to make. Yeah.
And I have 2 questions to ask. I don't really know the proper way to ask them, so I'm going to fumble through it and you can help me out. What was the prognosis? How serious of a cancer was this, and how long did this whole, I feel it might be downplaying it to call it a cancer scare because you had cancer, but how long did it all last?
Okay, so prognosis was never. It was stage 3, so it was that means it's localized. It's not spread. It hasn't spread around your body.
Okay.
There's always the danger, like the fear that it could spread at any point. So it was localized in my arm, and like this sounds terrible, but like the worst thing that if it started spreading within my arm, like I guess they could have cut off my arm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in any other part of my body.
Okay.
But I had chemo and radiation. Chemo, that's a very physically taxing treatment. And for kids, I guess you do it for a long time in small doses, sort of thing. Okay. So that whole thing, there was 2 separate protocols, we call them, of treatment. And the first one lasted a year, and then there was still some cancer that was still left in my arm. So then I had another 6 months after that. So the whole thing took almost 2 years. So I was 12 by the time I stopped my treatment.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a 2 years. I can only imagine for your parents.
But and puberty, I went through puberty during that. It was so I don't even have a puberty story. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even,
yeah. It's like, I had other things going on, guys.
Yeah, they're kind of irrelevant. Yeah.
Life was kind of more stressful than that. And I actually learned about you having childhood cancer because of Quilts for a Cure. Mm-hmm. So Holly Ann Knight from String and Story is a dear friend of this show. She just did the episode with me where she interviewed me. She's been on for her own. And she has Quilts for a Cure where they make quilts for kids with childhood cancer. What was it like to work with Quilts for a Cure when you yourself had childhood cancer?
It's still, we're still kind of in the talks stage of how we're actually going to collaborate, because it's going to be, I think it's going to be ongoing. I had my guild make quilts for Operation Smiley 2018 a few months ago. That was kind of our first contact that we made, and then I talked to her a few weeks ago about this particular experience that I had. So that interview's on her blog. But there will be a collaboration in the future. We just don't know what form it's going to take. So I'm pretty excited to think about that and where it will lead in the future. But having a voice that has gone through it, we hear, because kids don't have that kind of voice necessarily when they're going through it, only retrospectively. Or, retrospectively now, this happened to me over 20 years ago.
Right.
And now I have words to put to it, where the kid wouldn't have either the insight or the vocabulary to express what they're feeling, or how, or see the picture of what has happened to them, or what is happening to them.
Yeah.
So having that perspective, I think is unique for Holly Ann and Quilts for Cure at this point. She's had lots of adult cancer survivors help with the initiatives. But we're gonna see what the future holds for Quilts for Cure and me, Third Story Workshop.
Yay.
Yeah. Yep. It's gonna be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and we'll put the link to the interview you did with her on her blog, in the show description, so that people can go check that out and check out Quilts for a Cure and all those wonderful things that are going on. And we'll definitely keep our eyes out to see what happens, because you do such gorgeous things and you take on such gorgeous projects. And we really want to talk about the Our Song quilt. That's the project we really want to talk about today and delve into. So can you explain to everybody what that is?
All right. So Our Song, Your Reflection is the name of the project, and it's a crowdfunded project, and it's a collaboration. So again, we're talking about this cross-pollination of music and quilting. This has taken probably form in different ways over the years and decades and centuries, that these two art forms have existed, which is, I guess, forever. Yeah. But I did a collaboration with Megan Smith, and she's a songwriter. And I approached her to write a song. So Megan is like an award-winning musician and songwriter, and she is no longer with a record label. She has had she's a successful recording artist. But now, her kids are little. They're 3 and 1. They're small. So she didn't want to be touring with this young family at home and having to leave them necessarily. So she is now writing commission songs. So, like you would commission an art piece for your dining room or your living room or your home, or for how a corporation might commission artwork for their lobby, for example. She writes songs for people. So she writes songs for babies that are born, for significant wedding anniversaries, for birthdays, and for on a darker side, like for spouses that have passed away, for people who have gone through trauma. So she writes these beautiful commission songs packed with meaning, but at the same time universal in the way that they would be able to speak to an audience. And so I approached her to write a song. So exactly what we were talking about before, about community and finding people that share your passion. I had her write a song about what it's like to be a part of the quilting community. So there's no like overt quilting references in the song. There are some, but like you can't really, you have to like look for them to notice them. And simultaneously I designed a quilt, to go with the song. So these are two unique, like independent pieces of art that we created, for this project to celebrate community. Now the quilt will become a pattern, and this is why it's crowdfunded, is that this particular pattern there are tons of patterns out there that are really hard. They're like, they're hard out there. They're hard. And like this is a complex pattern. So to write it would be like writing something between like a pattern and a book. Like it's not quite as involved as a book, but it's quite a hefty effort to write this pattern. But I know that some people would want this as a pattern. So, the crowdfunding kind of, it takes pre-orders for the pattern and the kit. So I know that I've made a certain number of sales of the pattern before I actually embark on writing the pattern. Yeah. Which is kind of scary for me. I haven't seen it done like this. But to take on a project of this scale where there is music to be written, music production, there's various musicians involved in the process. There's a videographer. There are photographers involved. There is myself. There is my pattern testers. There is fabric for the pattern tests that need to happen, that need to be, so there's all these costs, associated with the project. Some of it is like regular, let's quote unquote, regular pattern design stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's the music side of things, as well as the music video. Oh, I didn't even talk about the music video. This is really important.
Oh yeah.
Part of the project is, having people, submit their photos for the final, music video. So that's a photo of their community, whether that actually is actually a quilt, or if it's, their community sewing together, or, their local quilt shop where community, comes together, or if it's like outside of quilting community, celebrating those aspects of our lives where people are coming together. This will be part of the final music video. And that's part of the crowdfunding, campaign as well.
I love it. It's such an amazing. So where did the inspiration for this come from? Was it born out of community and just knowing these beautiful artists?
Yeah, the inspiration for the project was definitely that. It was really about community. Like, how do you write a song for these people that mean a lot to you, but you don't even know some of them, right? Like, yeah. Some of them, for example, on social media, our community there, you've never met these people. You converse with them and you support each other, you encourage each other, you motivate each other. We haven't never actually met in person, and that's a community too. So, I really wanted to highlight that aspect of quilting. People that don't know what quilting looks like today don't have any point of reference as to what it means. But, we've seen in the last few years major initiatives to support people that are suffering from trauma. So, like Quilts for Pulse, for example, a few years back. Yep. Over 1,000 quilts were made for that project. Quilting in Canada specifically, a few months ago, there was a hockey team there was a bus accident. And so this very small community in Saskatchewan, was heavily hit with a high death toll of these young people that were, across the world, a couple thousand quilts have been made for this community. Rallying around people and these groups of people that care, but care from afar. And, how do you celebrate that? How do you highlight that? And so this was the real inspiration behind, the song, was that we are a community and we lift each other up and we support each other, and, we like being together.
Yeah. Yes. And that's so funny that you mentioned that about like Quilts for Pulse and all these different initiatives like that, because I really do, and I'm probably biased and I'm not even going to apologize for it, but I really do think the quilting community is so special in the way that they reach out to other people who are hurting and in need and so ready to wrap their arms around people via these quilts.
Yeah, and it is, and it's a way for us as quilters to understand and to wrap our own minds and hearts around what has happened, this tragedy. Yes. So, like, why would this happen? Or, it's our own way of grieving, even though we're not part of, we're in the middle of it. A way of processing, what has happened. I found this especially true when we were making quilt blocks for a community in Quebec City where there was a shooting at a mosque.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, why would humans do this? Like, what kind of hate, it helps us when we're making these blocks to contribute to a larger project. We're really thinking about like why would this happen? Or like, what can I do to make this better? Or what can we do as a community to make things better? Not just through the quilting, but like through other community. How do I love better? How do I treat my fellow human beings better? So that this kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I'm so excited about this project. I really am. So how do people go get involved with the Our Song, Our Reflection project?
Yeah, so you can go to, there's a URL that will lead you to the campaign. It's Third Story Workshop. That's my company name, 3rdworkshop.com/oursong. And that will lead you to the IndieGogo page, which is the crowdfunding page. And there's a video there that tells you all about the project, as well as some text and a lot of images that will show you what Megan and I have been working on. And there are different ways to support the project. On the right, there's different perks. So a lot of it is pre-ordering the pattern, supporting the song. I painted the design in a watercolor, so there's prints of that. And there's other sorts of ways to support, like financially support the project. But the highlighted perk is your community package, which is where you can submit your photo to the music video. And other ways you can support the project are just sharing it and in your Facebook, on your Facebook page, or in your IG feed, or in your IG stories, or something like that. Sharing it would be awesome.
I love that. Yeah. I think that sometimes we forget how important just sharing something that somebody else is doing is. Like right now, if everybody went out, shared it on their Instagram page, I'm going to go ahead and tell you should do that because it's so huge. It helps these ideas catch like wildfire. And this is a really great one. The quilt is freaking gorgeous. I mean, really.
Thanks. Yeah, I took some, again, bridging that tradition to kind of the modern aesthetic. I took a Lone Star pattern and embedded this swan inside the Lone Star, and then inside on the bottom half of the Lone Star is the reflection of the swan. So the song is called Your Reflection, and the swan is by itself, like we work in our studios by ourselves when we're sewing, but you're surrounded by all these people. Your community is reflecting back to you your values and your passions, and then there's all these stars that are surrounding you, that are all these people that are lifting you up. So the song, you have to listen to the song. If you hit the updates tab on that inside the campaign, you'll be able to hear the whole song. And you'll see lots of pictures of the quilt on that page. But I love this design. It uses 34 different fabrics, different solid colored fabrics. And I'm really proud of it. I'm not usually smitten with my own work. Yeah. But I literally like this.
It's gorgeous. It's, and like I was destined to be partial to it because I'm obsessed with Lone Star quilts and these colors. These are like totally my colors. So I was just like, oh, so in love with it from the start. Like, everybody has to see this quilt.
Yeah, and there's, I'm getting an animal pin made. Sorry, this is kind of off topic, but just veered the conversation one way. I'm getting this enamel, like a limited edition enamel pin made of the swan. And I'm hoping to get that by the end of next week, and I can show everybody. This is like super exciting, endeavor for me to make it a little enamel pin, have it designed and made. And that's part of the swag that you can get if you support the campaign. And I'm very excited about the whole thing and a little terrified, but,
but you've already raised 25% of your goal, right?
Yeah. And, this is really exciting. A lot of it is, so there's, I mentioned the people that need to, be paid for their work in this collaboration. But I also am bringing in, through my local quilt shop, we're being able to offer kits because it is so many different colors of fabric. People having the kit it's helpful for them to be able to just have it all there and not have to shop for every little bit, of it. And, and that's a significant cost as well for a small, like my local quilt shop it's a small business just like I am. And so bringing in that number of bolts of fabric is a significant cost. So, that's part of the fundraising is to cover, that offering. Yeah.
I love it. So one thing I would like to cover before we head into the 3 Creative Women's League musts, crowdfunding. I've talked to a few listeners who are confused by it. They don't know who to go with. Should they be on a Kickstarter, an IndieGogo, go with something else? So I was wondering why you chose IndieGogo versus Kickstarter, and just how that's going for you so far.
Okay, so I did a bit of research, as one should, before you embark on a crowdfunding campaign. And Kickstarter, the main difference between Kickstarter and IndieGogo for a crowdfunding project is that Kickstarter is all or nothing. So if you don't reach your project goal of X amount of dollars, you get none of the funding. With IndieGogo, you can get partial funding. So if I meet 50% of the goal, which I would be happy about as well, you get that money. And you have to carry out all the things you have proposed,
right,
or at least in part to fulfill the perks that you have offered people as they support the campaign. So I chose IndieGogo for that reason. I knew I had costs already that I needed to cover, and the way in my own plan for it, if I hit 10,000, I'll be able to cover a certain amount of my things and scale back some of the scale back the fabric kits, and we won't bring in the full. We'll work to fit the funding that we bring in to what we're offering. And then if I hit 15,000, then I can definitely pay everybody and then start paying myself after the $15,000. So this particular way of structuring it, this is why it's scary for me, is that it feels like, maybe it's just me, Kate. I don't really know. But I feel like I'm airing my dirty laundry sometimes because people don't really talk about money that much.
Right.
But for a pattern designer, like, these are costs that we always have to swallow before we launch a pattern.
Yeah.
We have to spend a certain amount of, number of hours. Like, we're not talking 2 hours, we're talking 50 plus hours.
Yeah.
Just to make one sample quilt, and to design it. And then we have pattern testers, and a lot of the industry works on pattern testers being willing to give their time for free. And I think it's really important to start paying my testers. I do always give them a token of some sort, but for this time I want to be able to offer a little bit more to them. Providing the fabric, often pattern testers will pull from their own stash and use what they have to test your pattern for you. But I want to be able to provide the fabric for them. I will have these samples made. I will make myself more than one sample. I'm going to be making one out of Allison Glass's new line of fabrics, which I'm so excited about. I'm in the middle of that one right now. So these tests need to get quilted. So that also takes time and money. So I'm going to send a couple to a long arm quilter, and she is a business herself too, so I need to pay her for her time and materials. So this particular section, that's just apart from the song itself, there is this whole there's a whole bunch of expenses that go into making a pattern. So I want people to be aware, this is part of the education part of it, is that I want people to be aware whether or not I make this goal. Like, these are the costs that it takes to make a pattern.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to print a certain number and offer them, and for it to be a good product. In another industry, say if you're an engineer and you're testing your product, you're going to pay people to test it for you.
Yes.
Right? And you're going to, you're going to cover their costs for them. So the expectation that people will do it for free or should do it for free, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a way, having this campaign goal number is it's a bit, I feel very vulnerable because I am putting a number to it and it's for all to see. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. It's that thing of, you got to take these big steps to get big results. And I just think it's the reason why it spoke to me so much when you had messaged me about it and, asked if you could either share about it in the group or, just see how Creative Women's League could be involved in this. And it spoke to me so much because we are all women who are running businesses. We all want to be doing what we love, making things we love, giving these things to other people in the world, right? Like, none of this exists in a vacuum. We're just doing it to be selfish. Or else we wouldn't spend so much time on Instagram or Pinterest, right? It'd be like, forget that other stuff. So I really love it because I think it's a big step in getting people paid. And we all want to be paid. And we all have to be paid. I mean, we have to.
We have to eat.
We have to eat. We have families that have to eat. We have lights that we want to stay on. So I just really love, I love that. I love that about it. That I feel like in a lot of ways, and maybe this is odd, but I feel like in a lot of ways, it's bringing light the fact that we got to get paid and we deserve to get paid, and we can do big, scary, creative things like crowdfunding. But we're creative women. We want to help each other out. So whether it's, $5, $75, $100 towards this or sharing it, we need to support everything that gets another creative woman paid and making the things that she wants to make for us.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thanks, Kate.
Soapbox. So now that I'm done gabbing. No, but really, you're so phenomenal, Andrea. You do such gorgeous work. And you've brought in other people who do such awesome work on this project. It's really a special thing.
Yeah. And I wanted to tell you that I forgot another big part of it was that throughout this campaign, I'm having people, make a little block that's part of the pattern. It's a small little 2x6, 2" by 6" block. And they're telling the story of their community. And I love that we can cross promote that way, but also share these amazing stories of how community has transformed the way they work as artists or as business people, and how other people, just the fact of having other people surround them is so fundamental to what they do. So, I will be collecting those blocks and they're mailing them to me, and I'm going to make, another quilt out of it. I don't know what it's going to look like yet because it's going to be a bit different from the original design. Yeah. But it's going to become a quilt. It'll be in the final music video too. So, I'm excited about that part of the project too. Another part of the creative process.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ways that creative women can get involved on this project. I love it. I love it. Because, like I said, I love me some community. I think it's so important. And thank you so much for being on the show. Really, this has been so much fun.
Thank you.
But it's time to head into the Creative Women's League Musts. What do you think about that?
Sure.
Awesome.
I'm ready.
You can do it. When I did my interview, This is the part I was most nervous about.
Oh, really?
Yes, huh. I don't know why.
There's such concrete answers to these questions.
I know, it was the worst. I'm fine talking about my soul all day, but then when you have to, like, nail me down to, like, tell somebody a book they have to read, I'm like, oh, no. That's weird. Okay. But what is one thing every badass woman should read, watch, or listen to?
Okay, so there are lots of things, lots of podcasts I listen to, but I was, like, thinking about, like, what would the badass woman want to listen to?
Yeah.
So it's not by a woman at all. It's Revisionist History. It's a podcast with Malcolm Gladwell. And so he takes these, stories that we hear about and kind of reinvestigates them. And, like, what is the truth that we missed when we were reporting on this particular story? For example, I think a few weeks ago, in this present season, I think it's season 3, he talks about a couple of football players, college football players, and NFL players that died by suicide.
Yeah.
But then he traces it with medical experts, and he talks to the families of these football players, traces it to a particular connection to head trauma. So essentially, these guys are getting hit over the head, in the head, like, multiple times a day, and that has an effect on your brain and how your brain works, and can bring on depression. So, these tragic stories of these football players that have died this way, he's kind of reinvestigating and looking at it from a different perspective. So there's stories like that. They're not all as heavy, but it's an interesting way to relook at what truth is, and how we can open up stories again and see different things.
I love stuff like that. I really do. Have you seen, I think it's just called Reanimated History. But it's the guy who does or the people who do Adam Ruins Everything. And then, so, he's always ruining something, telling you how it actually is. And they started doing, they'll take, like, historical events and tell you, like, no, Paul Revere didn't really do that. So it's like, it's really interesting. Yeah, I'm going to download that. For sure.
Cool.
For sure. Okay, and then the next one is, who is one woman we should all go follow right now?
Okay, so I actually don't know a lot about this woman. I just came across her yesterday.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So, Cathy Heller is, oh no, now I can't remember her business name, but she owns a music licensing company.
Oh.
And her story I heard on the podcast, What Works.
Yeah.
And she which is a business podcast. And she has her own podcast as well. But she is she writes songs, and when she got a couple of record deals that fell through, she started writing licensed music for, like, ads. And really, her main point is that we as business people are serving someone who is going to pay for what we do. So how can we best serve them? So when she first started her company, she started by just offering to have a coffee with some sort of advertising agency or advertising or marketing part of a company. 65 emails she sent out, offered a coffee and to drop off some music to them, a sample. And out of those 65 emails that she dropped, she had like over 20 projects that came in from this, to write licensed music, for whatever ad campaign or, TV show or movie, cause music is everywhere, obviously.
Absolutely.
We don't realize we're consuming it, but every ad we watch has music. So she's filling this niche and really serving the people, her clients. So at the heart of it, what is your offering and what are you what are you able to serve? How are you able to serve, X, like, person, company, and this is what Megan does too with her music. Megan Smith, my collaborator. So that's what she's doing. She's serving the person who's asking her to write a song about this event or about, their story. So being able to tap into that is fundamental to the way Cathy Heller works, and how her company works. It's pretty cool. I was like blown away.
Very cool. We'll have a link to her Instagram, and we'll have a link to, you said she has a podcast as well, right?
Yeah, a podcast and maybe her Twitter feed. And I think that would probably seem to have a lot of info in there too.
Perfect. Okay, well, last but not least, what is one mantra, quote, or affirmation that you lean on often?
I have a lot actually, but this one is particularly meaningful to me right now, and it's a part of a Switchfoot song. The wound is where the light shines through, and this kind of like where you're most vulnerable, or where you're hurting, or is where like magic happens, where you can find joy and love and forgiveness amidst like pain and fear and doubt and insecurity. When you're wrestling with those kind of hardy emotions, that's where light can get through. So I think Leonard Cohen has a similar lyric where it's like, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. So where these weaknesses are is where that optimism can really rise. There's a hashtag on Instagram, hashtag where the light shines through, and people have filled in, through their own images, kind of what has brought them light, what wound has brought their light. So, which is really cool. So you'll link to that, I think. Yeah. There's people that say like, my daughters are where the light shines through. That can be fairly obvious. But then there's other ones where, like, again, we were talking about Orlando and Pulse. Yeah. Orlando is where the light shines through.
Absolutely.
And so where these hard things happen is where we see the goodness of people. We can see
We actually have an episode about that, because I'm in Orlando, and we did an episode with Sandra Ray, and it was about how, when Pulse happened, that was a terrifying few days. That was a really bizarre couple weeks. A really bizarre week. And then Orlando hit the ground running. We still have rainbow hearts all over our city. We still have One Orlando all over our city. Like, it brought this city together like I never thought Orlando would be so in love with each other and so hand in hand. And absolutely. So I love that so much. That's absolutely where the light shone through. That's a great quote. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
This was a quick turnaround for you and I. We were just like, okay, well, can you record Monday? That was like 2 days ago. But I'm so glad you did. So before you go, and like I said, we'll have links to everything in the show description, but definitely let people know right now where they can find you and the project.
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is Third Story Workshop, 3RD Story Workshop. And my website is thirdstoryworkshop.com, so 3rdstoryworkshop.com. And then the song project, our song Your Reflection, is 3RD, again, Story Workshop, thirdstoryworkshop.com/our song.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we're all gonna, at the very least, I know everybody listening is gonna share this for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you so much to Andrea for being on the show. I loved this episode. I love talking about crowdfunding because I think it's something a lot of you are going to be looking towards in the near future. And I think it's wonderful to know that you really can do it. You can absolutely crowdfund a dream project. Andrea was able to put together an awesome team of makers and put together this fantastic work. So I know you can too. Like, obviously, come on. You got this. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you subscribe. And while you are there, don't forget to leave that review on iTunes. I want to be giving you a shout out on the episode next week. Join us on Instagram at Creative Women's League and in the Facebook group. Creative Women's League on Facebook. You can go like the page there. You can leave a review there if you don't listen on iTunes. And then join the Facebook group. Get involved in this awesome community. We want to hear from you. Thank you so much. I love chatting with you, and I will see you Monday. You're still here? It's over. Go home.